You're about to listen to an archived episode of The Night Shift with Zeno Hiroman. This is brought to you commercial-free by the Surfcast Podcast. If you're interested in more historical, educational, and entertaining surf fishing content, check out weekly episodes of the Surfcast Podcast available today on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and anywhere else you get your podcasts, including www.surfcastpodcast.com.
Today we have distinct pleasure of having JM on our show, one of the best fishermen that I know. You can find him in Montauk, you can find him in Cape Cod, you can usually find him whatever the hell the bite is, on a Jersey jetty when the bite was hot, and last few years, or last dozen years in Mexico. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So welcome, JM.
Hey, Zeno, good to be here. Glad to talk about Mexico anytime.
How did you end up in Mexico? Like, I've seen you in Montauk, I've seen you in Cape Cod. I know you're kind of guy that likes to go where the fish is, but how did you end up? Mexico is not exactly, it's a little bit off the beaten path.
Yeah, it is. It's not a funny story. Actually, there's a guy, Frank Golda, who owns a restaurant called the Anchor Inn. For some reason, he hooked up with Todd, who was better known as High Plains Drifter on, I guess, SOL back in the day. And Todd, High Plains Drifter, used to run guides there. And this guy, Frank, who lives in New Jersey, was going on these trips. And he put together a trip and asked if I wanted to go. And basically that was it. That's how I ended up going. But we went behind Todd's back. We went on our own. We didn't go with Todd, used Todd as a guide, and he wasn't very happy because he liked to keep that place a secret. You've been there and you know.
Yeah, I've seen the stories where, the Jersey guys ruined it. The Jersey guys ruined everything. I don't mean in that terms, but I know that there has been some friction where Todd was very particular the way he wanted to organize his trips. And you guys basically were like, show me where the fish is and leave me alone.
Well, that's basically it. He was very, very... Listen, I met the guy. I went on one of his trips because I felt guilty. And he was the coolest, nicest guy. But he was not used to the East Coast approach to fishing, where we just want to fish all the time and find those fish and go no matter what time of day, what time of night. He basically liked to get up early in the morning and fish till 12 o'clock in the afternoon, and that was it. He didn't want anybody to go after without him. And the Jersey guys, they're bugged out. They fish at night. They fish all day. They wanted to go out all the time and catch fish. As if turns out you can catch fish all day and even into the night, but he stopped at 12 every day and everybody thought you don't catch fish after 12. So basically the Jersey guys did ruin it.
What was the surprise you the most about not only the fishing? And I know I've been surprised of just the power of those fish. Okay, to me, that was like the first time I hooked into jack. I swear I thought I hooked a tuna. And next thing I know, I got this like 4-pound fish that kicked my ass for like a half an hour. So what did you find the most surprising when you got there? Like, I know you've been there for a while, so you're kind of used to it now. But then, what was the coolest thing?
Well, I don't know if you ever get used to the power of those fish because... Well, first of all, it's very, very hot there. So you kind of have to be in some kind of shape. And like you said, those jacks, what they call toro in Mexico, because they're like bulls. You hook into them, you hook into a 30-pound jack, and I don't think I've ever felt power like that. And then on top of that, you're fighting a 10-foot, 8-foot, 6-foot shore break. And, to fight the waves coming in and out along with a fish with that much power, you caught that one fish and you didn't want to catch another one almost. You were so beat up,
I do remember my first jack, and I said afterwards I needed a break because those waves would come out 10, 12 feet, and when it would recede, the jack would go back another 100 yards. I'm like, well, I just spent like 10 minutes getting this fish in, and now it's gone. How do you... Yeah, as far as the lures, I know it's a totally different approach than what we do. And yet, to some extent, where you spend more time there, you realize that it's not. In the beginning, I was told you got to go over the top, you got to go fast. How do you actually go? Walk me through it. Not only to what you were used to or what you were told you have to bring, but how did that change over the years?
When I first went, I was scared to go because, first of all, I'm a little guy. And, we're throwing 11-foot rods. And really, didn't really use 11-foot rods back then. This is maybe 12, 13 years ago. A 10-foot surf rod pretty much took care of all needs around here. And as, time moved on, and the rods got a little better. We were using 11-foot rods. But the guy that told me, he said, you got to practice your casts because if you can't cast far, you're not going to catch a fish. You got to cast far. You got to cast over the wave. You got to draw the roosters in. And, I was scared. And then we're throwing, 4-ounce big fat pencil poppers that make big splashes. And, as when I got there, I just realized that you really didn't have to cast as far as this guy told me. And I was scared. And the fish are in, and they follow the lures in, like he said. But I also noticed that over time, I started using a stick shad. Now, my first time with a stick shad was not Cape Cod Canal. It was in Mexico because I watched this TV show on a young kid. He was probably 15 back then. His name was Wes. I think Wes Burrows is his name, and he lives in Cabo.
Yeah, he still guides out there. Cabo Surfcast or whatever his name is. Yeah, he's very good,
and
too.
And he held up a ghost stick shad. Now, I didn't even know what a ghost stick shad was. And this is before I even went to the canal. So I went and purchased one of these lures. And I brought it to Mexico. And I'm going, I'm not going to catch anything on this. And basically, I put it back in my bag and never used it for about 3 years later. And I started using it again and found out, hey, these rooster fish, they're not all the way out there. They're also cruising the surf zone. And you don't have to reel in really fast. You could pretty much striper fish for them, I found it very similar to striper fishing.
Yeah, to be fair, I mean, if you get guys with fly rods targeting these fish, they can't be that far. I mean, seriously.
And not only a fly rod, these kids are targeting them with a Coke bottle and string and a little piece of metal. The Mexican locals are throwing hand lines out and catching these fish, which is talk about skills.
It's mind-boggling. I think I saw a guy with like a 40-pound cubero right in front of Fernando's resort with like a hand line, and the guy didn't even flinch. I mean, he just looked at us with all the rods, and he was like, "Yeah, okay, whatever you say." But no, I mean, listen. As far as the stick shads in particular, and stick shads are something that I think a lot of people are still afraid of. I'm going to tell you a story. When I met Patrick Sabile, we were on his boat, and he was doing this thing in like 40 feet of water, catching these spin sharks, and I couldn't get it, and then I took him to Long Island, and he was catching Spanish mackerel, and I'm like, wait, Spanish mackerel? What? I didn't even know how that happened. That was a whole other story. But then one night I'm fishing a nor'easter out in the Falls Spa, and I had one of the best nights of my life by just casting him with the wind instead of fighting the wind, and just working him a little like a bucktail, and the gigantic profile. All my fish were like 30 pounds and up. I mean, I was convinced. I started using them like crazy. And I did use them in Mexico, not as obviously, I wasn't as let's just say as lucky or as good as you were. But how important it is that speed when you're working a pencil popper or a popper?
Well, that's another thing. Back in the day, everybody said, you reel it in as fast as you can. And we used to take these big pencil poppers, and I used to go with Jerry Fabiano, who was he did RV plugs back in the day. So he made us these big pencils. And back in the day, also used to take a 5/0 treble hook and used to cut the welded hook off of it. So it's two hooks, and then you'd hammer it flat like an anchor. And we used to throw those lures and reel them in as fast. And back in the day, I had a 275 Van Stahl, and you could use them. I mean, I caught fish on them. But what to make up for the speed is you used to cast out and walk backwards as you reeled in, and that made up for the speed. So, having a fast reel and the Van Stahl will work fine for you. You just got to compensate. But over the years, I found, the lures are getting smaller and smaller, and you could reel them in easier and faster on the top of the water. And they're really looking for anything moving, those fish. I think they're just predators, and they just want to eat anything that comes by them. Also, I noticed that the stick shed, they were hitting the belly hook. Everybody thought it was just a tail hook. They were actually coming up and hitting the belly hook. So that idea changed also. So I basically go now, and I very rarely put the pencil on. I just enjoy fishing lures like I do striper fishing. I try different gliders, but stick shed's my go-to.
I've noticed over the years when I was going that you don't have to throw a pencil popper. Some years we had fish chasing needlefish. We would throw needlefish plugs because you can burn them through the water with less resistance better than a popper because, popper gets caught in the water, which is the whole purpose of it. So throwing a big needlefish or even a small needlefish that you can cast out and just burn through over the top was actually a better choice than a popper a lot of times.
Oh, I totally agree. I mean, you're going to get tired dragging in that water. Any kind of popper, you know as well as I do, that casting all day in that heat and those big waves and then reeling in fast, and any kind of drag on that is going to beat you up all day. So yeah, the smaller things that are staying on the top and gliding across the water work just as well. And it's a lot easier on your body,
How would you advise somebody who was, let's say, thinking about putting up a setup to go there? Like, I know it depends on the height and it depends on the budget. Obviously, not everybody can afford a 5-piece rod that costs, $1,500 to go travel. But as an average thing, how would you advise somebody to pack?
Listen, you could the new Daiwa, the BG reels, if you're on a budget, and they work fine. You want a little bigger one, maybe a 5,000 H with a little speed to it. And you could, the tsunami airwaves, where it's a fine budget rod to use down there. You want something at least 11 foot and can handle 3 to 6 ounces. You don't want too much of a backbone because that kind of beats you up, because you really got to cast all day long. Some days you'll cast all week long and not catch a fish. I've been there. I know you've been there.
Yeah, I don't like that feeling, but I know what it is. Yeah, it's been like the last few years.
But listen,
But the thing is that it doesn't matter how much you get beat up. You go back to the resort, you have a few beers, you enjoy the food and all that, and then next morning you're like 5 a.m. You're like totally fresh, like anything can happen. Like, you never know. It's not the same kind of like locally when you kind of got a feel to what's going on to the bite, because these fish are migratory to a large extent, and they don't really stay in the same spot, so you do have to chase them down. Do you find I found that the morning, like whatever you do before 9 a.m. is basically you don't stop fishing for those few hours. And then after that, it's like you do whatever you want, but that's the time you really want to fish.
Yeah, you get up, you have that cup of coffee over at the little Fernando's little coffee place, and it's the best cup of coffee in the world for some reason. It could be instant, but it just tastes so good. And you get on those ATVs, and you see the sun coming up and back in the mountains, and the best is hearing the roosters. When you hear those roosters, you almost saying, "Oh, it's time, it's time, it's time." And like you said, you never know. You could have the best 2 hours in that morning and have nothing all week. But you're right. It just happens out of nowhere, It's just such an enjoyable experience just to go, even if you don't catch.
For those of you who don't know what we're talking about, and I understand, I just realized that some of you might not, both of us go to this place called, what is the name of the hotel?
It's the El Recancito in Maito.
Right. It's about 2 hours, I would say, south of Puerto Vallarta.
2 hours south through the mountains of Puerto Vallarta. And
I'll put the link in the show notes. But, we've been all going there for many years, and you can get the ATVs waiting for you. They can pick you up at the airport. Literally, if you never fish outside the country, you don't have to worry about it. It's almost kind of like going to Cuddy Hunk, where you get off the boat and they take you to the place and says, "This is where you fish," and you're good. But it's really a wonderful place to spend some time. And one of the things that really throws kind of a monkey wrench in this whole thing. And it's not even the fact that some days are better than others. It's the storms later in the season when you go. And I know you've been through the same experience as I have. And sometimes these hurricanes really mess up the beach. And I could not believe, I think last year when we went, I mean, it looked like the bomb went off. There was trees for miles down the beach, dead cows. There was stuff I've never seen in my life on that beach.
In all my years, Zeno, that last year that you and me went, I think we went back to back, week to week or what. I never saw anything like that in my life. The amount of lumber on the beach. I mean, there were trees the size of tractor trailers, and it's not even, I can't even exaggerate. And what happens, I guess, is, those mountains get some really heavy rains and the rivers overflow, and anything in those rivers or on its banks is going to wash into the ocean and up along that beach, and it's dangerous because you could be fishing in the surf and those big waves push up a log and you could get whacked from behind. You got to really watch yourself. It's really comfortable there, and the people are so genuine, and I feel really safe there.
Speaking of which, a lot of people probably feel a little bit skittish going outside of the country, especially when they hear Mexico. From my personal experience, when I went there, I felt totally 100% safe. It was almost like going back to Croatia when I go to see my mom. It was like this. It was crazy how wonderful that place is. What was your experience as far as the safety and comfort and all that other stuff?
Well, like I said, the particular place that we go, the El Rinconcito, the owner comes and picks you up at the airport. And from that moment on, he takes care of everything. You don't have to take money out. He handles everything, and he talks to people for you. He buys your food for you. He gets your drinks. He really looks over you. And it seems like everybody knows him in Puerto Vallarta and along the whole way. So when you're driving, everybody's waving at him. And when you get to his place, you're basically part of his family. In fact, he had an argument with his wife once, and she said, "Hey, don't argue in front of JM." And he goes, "I could argue in front of JM. He's part of our family now." That's the kind of feeling this place, the vibe it has. You're totally part of their family. They look out after you. If you don't feel good, she's going to help you.
For me, the eye-opening experience is when we got there first time. I think I went out with Ryan White from Century Rods, and we got there, and I went to the bar, and I took a beer, and he gives me the book, and he goes just like, right here, whatever you drink, and then at the end of the trip, we'll tally this up like an honor system. I'm going like, just step back in time about 100 years. I mean, this is how we did it.
You got a little piece of paper with your name on it. And he goes, "Yeah, you basically go in their store and take whatever you want. And anytime you have a drink, you just put a check next to and he tallies it up. And it's just such a great place. It really is."
When you're picking up plugs for the trip, for the top water, what is it that you pick? Is there specific ones that you like more than others? Is it because of the casting distance? Is it because of the hook setup? How do you go about that?
I'm starting to get lazy now, so I'm really liking a small, tight little pencil that just basically you could rip in. Something like a left hook or a lights out. Those small canal profiles they use up at the canal because on the East Coast you guys got I'm not saying you, but the Jersey styles to bounce those big damn pencils in the water. You don't have to do that there. So you want something small that rips across. So I'm looking for a small, like a canal style profile pencil popper. Even a Super Strike Bullet, they work great. And Robert Ranger's awesome choice. That's an old school lure and it always produces. And, Line Stretcher. In fact, Ray from Line Stretcher, he no longer owns the company, but he caught like a 50-pound rooster on one of his plugs. So
I do like Robert Rages and I do like Line Stretcher. I believe Ray is not making plugs anymore, right? I think he's done.
No, he dissolved that business. So those are hard to get now. So if you find them, I just found one in a garage sale, so I picked one up.
Yeah, I was looking at them in my basement the other day. I was looking up, although I didn't get to go this year. I'm looking up. I'm like, next time I got about a dozen of them still in the package. I'm like, I am not. I used to give them to friends. At this point, when somebody goes out of business, everything changes.
Yeah.
Like no more,
now,
can't have them.
Yeah, the sparks. I saw a couple of guys looking for them the other day. Like once that spark gets lit, that they're unavailable. Everybody decides they want them.
What's your feeling about fishing in the dark over there?
Well, listen, I am such a bad example of a night fisherman because I really don't do it that much. I really like fishing in the day, but I honestly think it would produce at night. It's just a little scary because it's dark, and sometimes the stuff in the water, the waves are so big, you don't want to get caught in one of those backwashers at night, and so I'm a little scared to fish at night there, especially if there's wood or something in the water that you can't see. It could put you out for the week. You're not in America.
Yeah, that's true. I don't think I wanted to test their medical system over there because I don't think I even seen a hospital within 100 miles of where I was.
Well, I did test the hospital over there. I went out on my own, and luckily I carry bolt cutters with me. But I caught a fairly decent rooster, 30 pounds, on the stick shad, and I went to take it off, and the fish jumped, and I caught a hook, owner hook in my palm, with the rooster fish on the other hook. So I had to cut. Ouch. I had to run up and get the bolt with the fish bouncing around. Then I had to drive the whole length of the beach on an ATV, and then 10 miles to a doctor, and it was pretty amazing. I mean, it's not anything that you're used to.
I bet.
They basically take a needle and Novocaine that's just in a little jar, puts the needle in and numbs you out. But I wasn't going to say no. I was in pain.
What, no tequila?
No tequila.
Oh, damn it. I'm so disappointed
I
right now.
wanted to go home and get the tequila, though. and yeah.
But there's also some special situation over there. I remember last year, or was it the year before? It might have been last year. We had that, like you said, sometimes you get a lot of rain that comes down and you get breach. The beach literally breaches from the rivers that float out. And we've noticed last year, the locals, like you said, hand lining had a ton of fish. We couldn't get any, but like they were like 6-inch black little freshwater fish flushing literally out of the river into the sea and looked like a mud line. And there was a lot of fish in that mud line, but they wouldn't take any plugs.
I've gotten nice fish in the mud, in that coffee color water. Everybody says, oh, the water's dirty, you're never going to catch a fish. But believe it or not, they're in there too, because that's where they're picking up their bait. And I guess they have the senses to find the bait, but it's not easy with the lures, but they are in there. That's where all the bait is, in that dirty water, believe it or not.
Yeah, no, I've seen these like like a little sea bass almost look like 6-inch. They were just flushing right out of the beach, and locals were live lining them. They were literally grabbing them by the hand because these fish would come from freshwater into saltwater, and they would get stunned because of salinity of the water. So they would just kind of float around, and they would just take them on a hand line and just throw them out there. And they had all kinds of fish, and we were like, we're here with all this $2,000 rod and all this crap and nothing. And again, to touch back what you said about the equipment, I mean, I use the ODM. I think Genesis is what I usually use because that's what I use at home. It's a 2-piece rod. It's nothing that's, great, God knows what. It's just a rod that I like the action of. And I use, I think, one of at the flea market, you can pick up some of those old Saltigas, Daiwa, whatever they are.
Yeah, the Saltigas.
You can pick up the old ones. They're a little faster, whatever the fastest really does help. With a Van Stall, like you said, you have to walk backwards. You try to make up for that speed that you don't have, and you do get exhausted. You do get exhausted because it's a lot of casts, and once somebody has a follow, everybody goes insane. That's just the way it is, the excitement of the place. But it doesn't have to be, like I said, 5-piece.
No.
It really doesn't have to be. And the whole trip is really like, a lot of people might think that this is like a really like an extravagant experience. But I was shocked the first time I went. We rented a quads. We stayed there for a week. They feed you for a week. And he gave me a bill, and it was like, I don't know, maybe $1,000 for the week. And I was like, wait, this is for what? I mean, this is just for what? Quad? No, it's food and a hotel.
Everything.
But I swear to God, the hotel was like $20 a night. It was ridiculous.
And they pick you up at the airport. That's included too, which is a sometimes 3-hour ride, sometimes through the mountain,
That alone would be a quarter of the trip just to pick up from the airport and back.
I mean, I think the average price over the years that is between $1,200 and $500, including plane fare. Unfortunately, the plane fares has gone up in the last couple of years. But basically, it's about a $1,500 trip, but it's well worth it, man.
You can't do that for a week in Mexico anywhere else.
You're not going to go to Cabo and do that. That'll cost you, $500 a day in Cabo probably.
At least. And there's some really nice places to eat, even if you don't want to eat at the hotel that you stay. There's next door. And I mean, my favorite story was we were in that, what is that restaurant?
Teguan, Candies.
Yeah, overlooking the cliffs. I mean, if you put that restaurant anywhere else, that would be like, holy shit.
Yeah.
And we eat in there, like 4 of us. We having lunch, we having drinks, 4 beers. She brings a bill and she goes like, I don't know what she says, 700 pesos, whatever she says. I have no idea. And I'm going like, what's that in dollars? She goes, it's like $30. I was like,
I know.
5 of us? I said, I'm buying the rest of the week. Are you kidding
me? You're so used to getting ripped off up here, But it's pretty amazing. And they're such humble people, and they're proud of everything they do. It's great. It's a great place.
Yeah. And the fact that you get to rent a quad and you get like basically 7-10 miles one way, and you get unlimited miles depending of if the access is open another way, it's another great thing. It does take maybe a day or two to kind of get your senses of what you're doing. But it does help a lot.
Even if you've been there every year, the first day's always a dry run, it's like, and you're always forgetting something, and you got to make sure you bring that cold drink with you. You're gonna die out in that heat.
No, I know. We've been freezing our bottles the night before,
that's what we do. Freeze them up.
And then you just put them in, and you have them all day and just sip on it. Speaking of which, I remember a few years ago there were 2 guys there. That one of the guy was from California. I think he had like a 70-pound rooster on a 7-foot rod years ago. It was a ridiculous size fish, right? So they're fishing the furthest you can go, all the way down by the inlet. What was it, 7-mile mark? Whatever it is, right? So the quad breaks down. One decides to walk back to get help. It took him like 4 hours. By the time he got back, he looked like he needed a hospital. He was So, there's some precautions that you should take. Sunscreen, always had on a quad, cold water, and the cell phones, they don't work. They don't work that well over there. So that's something that you definitely should keep in mind.
I found if you're going to rent quads, you're going to go with a group of guys. We used to share a quad. 2 of us used to share a quad. And it's not worth it, because if you set up your quad, you could have all your lures on your own quad. You could have your drinks and everything. And then you travel with your friends. And if one breaks down, you got to ride back, But if one breaks down and 2 of you are on a quad and you're 7 miles away, you're done. So I found they're so cheap. I mean, it's worth going a little extra buck and getting your own quad instead of sharing one.
That's what we used to do. I mean, we've been doing. It's like, if we go 3 guys, we'll take 3 quads and we'll ride 2 and we'll leave 1 in the back. Just in case one breaks, you don't want to wait to get fixed. It's not that expensive. I mean, in my view, it's not that expensive.
Everything breaks in Mexico. I mean, they got everything's held together with a bungee cord and a song and a prayer, believe me. But
yeah, it kind of reminds me of my grandfather. That's the way everything was.
They don't worry about a thing, though. Those people, they have no sense of being scared. They have no sense of danger, and they're not afraid to do anything. They'll drive a thing built with rubber bands up a mountain, and they're
gonna see Señor to death, and then they're just gonna go do whatever they were gonna do originally.
Yep, exactly.
Now, do you find that your setup that you fish with here is the same, meaning like the line and a leader, or do you do something different?
No, you know what? I don't do anything different anymore. I'm so bad. I tie direct, and I think I can leave the leader on from year to year sometimes. But I leave.
It's a sign of the age, dude.
But I use 40, 50 pound braid. Invisibraid is what I've always used for some reason, and I really don't do anything different. I mean, everything's the same. It's striper fishing, topwater striper fishing. It's just don't you catch a fish. It's a lot different.
I feel the same way because last night I went out and I haven't gone for a while, and I wasn't expecting. I was in the sneakers and I made a first cast and I hook into this really nice fish, and I'm like, oh shit. Did I check the leader? I said, when is the last time I looked at this thing? So, as you get older, I think a lot of us go just like, we don't pay attention. Well, let me ask you something. When it comes to casting, I've noticed that you do kind of have to pay attention. It's not just a mindless casting. Like, you do have to time the waves. They are big sets.
And I have pictures and videos of myself in these waves, and I'm a little guy. Well, first of all, the wave erodes the beach. So sometimes you have to jump down a 6-foot cliff to get to the water's edge to cast, or sometimes you could cast on top of the cliff. Regardless, you have to if you catch a fish, you eventually have to come off of that cliff and get down to the water's edge to get that fish. And these waves, the next thing they're up to your neck out of nowhere. They come out of nowhere. And then the water rushing from your back, it's so powerful. And you got to be really careful. You got to check your surroundings and look in front of you and see what set's coming in, because it's going to be up to your neck before you know it.
To me, the most frustrating experience in Mexico is having a rooster shows up at the end of the wave as it's about to crash the shore, and I try to crank it, and next thing you know, my plug is on my feet and he turns around, and this happens
follow
like
that plug right up to the beach. It's pretty amazing.
It kills me. Like he shows up in like a last tenth of my retrieve. It's like, really, where you been before? And you run out of real estate.
I remember going
9 out of 10 times.
One year, me and Jerry Fabiano, the RV plug guy, we went, just the two of us one year, and we had the best fish. We were sight fishing, and every wave that came up, it was like an aquarium. You could see the jacks and the roosters ripping through them after bait, and you could actually find the fish by seeing them in the waves. And we would sight cast, we'd fish.
I think that's one of the most fascinating experiences when you go, especially on the days when there's nothing going on, or you think there's nothing going on, and the wave lifts up like right about to crash the beach, and you see these 50-pound roosters just gracefully just gliding through the wave, and you go like, oh my God. Or even when you see the small jacks, like 10 inches, thousands of them just chasing it in the last wave, and the water's boiling, like you're in the middle of Montauk Blitz, literally. I mean, it's kind of crazy. If you got a small plug enough, you're right in. And a small bucktail,
if you have your
it's a lot
little
of fun.
7-foot rod to target those little jacks, I mean, the pound for pound, they fight unbelievable also, and you'll have a great time
and
just doing that.
And there's also a chance of catching some strange fish there, because it's not all roosters and jacks. I mean, I've seen needlefish. I've actually hooked a dorado, mahi, or whatever you want to call it, which I didn't land, but I have seen other people catch it. I guess when the water's a little colder, is that what happens?
I don't know if it's cold. I really don't. I can't figure that out yet, but I know that you're right. I mean, the needlefish are pretty prevalent. They're there a lot. But the cabera and the grouper and the snappers, if you put like a rubber shad on, I hooked into a beautiful snapper once on a rubber shad, just running it through the rocks along the beach, And also I caught Pacific bonita, they were a lot like albies. You cast small metal, and it was just like albie fishing. There's so many different varieties you can catch there. You don't have to just target roosters.
Yeah, that's true. Because when I was there with Ryan, we actually went to these coves where there was a lot of rocks, and he was just 7-foot rod. He was throwing like a gulp, and he was having a ball with the little groupers and all kinds of stuff in there.
Yeah, they're fun. Those little fish, they're violent.
Plus the boats are, if you wanted to, the boats are really not that expensive. You want to take the panga out, it's what is it, like $50-$100 a day? I mean,
I've never done it.
Neither have I. Yeah,
and
but
I don't
it's not
know
that
why.
much.
I'm such a stubborn.
I know.
I gotta hit the
same,
surf. I gotta do the surf.
same.
I gotta do the surf. I'm so stubborn.
I know. Ryan went like 2 days because the surf sucked, and I was there all alone, going up and down, making the same cast. And he's like, he comes back with like, oh, we had this and we had this. And I'm like, I'm such an ass. I mean, but you get older, you get like I'm here. I travel all this way to fish for the roosters, and I'm not going on a boat.
That's what I do.
It's like we're going to Montauk, and somebody says you want to go on a boat. No, I don't want to go on a boat. I mean, that's really going on a boat.
And every year I say I'm going to do it, and I never do when I get there. Never. But it's easy though.
When do you find the best time to go there?
That's another thing. It's been changing. I don't know. It's been pretty rough the last couple of years. The fishing has declined a little bit. When I used to go, I always went the first week in October, and I've always done well. But in the very beginning, guys were going in July and August and doing really well. So, and I think now it seems like it's pushing into November and December they're catching roosters. So like around here, it's later and later every year. It's hard to pick a good time because like you said, they migrate and they don't stay in one place, and it's hard to figure them out. But I used to like going in October. Then I'll come home and striper fish.
Well, the striper fishing has its own challenges, I would say.
Jesus.
What would you consider? What would you consider in your mind when the fishing was good, or the years that you went? What would you consider a good day?
Oh, Jesus. I mean, you would catch 3 roosters and 5, 6 jacks, 7 jacks. I mean, it was pretty good. Now it's like, last year I didn't catch one fish. I didn't catch one fish last year. And the year before wasn't too much better. I caught a couple of jacks here and there, but it's been getting worse and worse every year, and I don't know why.
Yeah, that's kind of hard to know. Is it the migration? Is it a lot of pressure on the fisheries? It's not us. We don't keep almost any fish.
You know what? Try to do research on the rooster fish. There's not much known about them. They really don't know what their migration is or where they spawn. Nobody really knows that. There's not a lot of info on those fish, so they're kind of mystery,
That's true, because the species that are in a Baja or Cabo probably not that they're not the same roosters they are, but they have roosters in Costa Rica, they have them in Salvador, they have them in Mexico, but nobody really does anything like they do the Billfish Foundation, where they actually do some research. Yeah, there's really not much to it, so that makes a lot of sense. Well, thank you for spending some time with us, and thank you for giving us a little primer of how to fish Mexico and what to expect when it gets there. You're going to go again, I hope?
Oh, absolutely. I didn't go this year because of the COVID situation. And
same here.
I was planning on really taking off this year anyway. I like to give it 1 year break, and then I'll go back and do another 5 in a row, But I'm going back. I love those people. I want to say hello to them. They're cool people.
You know what? After talking to you, I just want to go and hug them. I don't even want to fish. I just want to have a dinner with them.
Absolutely.
The cooking that Fernando does for you, it's alone worth going there. Never mind the fishing. The fishing is just a bonus. The whole experience is great. I wouldn't say that if I was going to, we went to Costa Rica a few times and we fished, and it was different. We stayed in a hotel. We didn't really mix with locals. This was a totally different experience. You literally, once you're done fishing, you put your rods away, you go in a hammock, you get a cold beer, you're good. You're like home.